My promise to you is that I will pass on the best advice I can from my own experiences. I am Agatha Christie.
You gotta be kidding me. Well, here we are again. I did not intend to make 2 AI videos in a row, but then I saw this thing, and I went through the 5 stages of grief, and I have not been able to stop thinking about it, and I really haven't seen many other people talk about it, so I guess I'm going to. The events leading up to my discovery of this horror were the following. Last week, Stella and I decided to do a little at-home movie night and watched Agatha Christie's Death on the Nile, which was a great movie. Phenomenal cast, highly recommend. I've read a few Christie novels over the years, but I'm not deeply familiar with her as a writer. So after watching the movie, I felt the need to do a Google and find out exactly which decades she was writing in. And immediately I see this creative writing course, apparently instructed by the legend herself. Because I used to be innocent and trusting, my first thought was, wow, that actress's likeness is uncanny. She looks just like Christie. That's crazy. Nope. Nope. That is not what's happening here. That is AI. Artificial intelligence has brought the world's best-selling novelist back from the great beyond, and I feel sick. I'm going to take a somewhat more casual approach today as opposed to a full, in-depth video essay and just go through some of the info BBC Maestro has shared about this course, as well as some news articles critiquing it, and just air some thoughts because boy, do I have them. Whether you've been on my channel before or not, you can probably already guess what my conclusion is going to be, that I cannot possibly support a project like this, and I find it downright disturbing. But this case is especially beguiling because they were so close to doing something that could have been pretty cool and then just had to go and ruin it with AI. So let's just get into it. If you're familiar with Masterclass, Maestro is BBC's version. If you're in the UK, you probably already know that. Like Masterclass, they have courses from experts in all sorts of areas. Carol Ann Duffy on poetry, Joe Malone on entrepreneurship, Edgar Wright on filmmaking, etc. And now, the best-selling novelist of all time, Agatha Christie, is teaching a course on mystery writing. Despite having died in 1976. Here are some excerpts from Maestro's description of the course. Agatha's approach to writing was methodical. She understood the mechanics of a good mystery like none before her or since. The structural requirements, the precise placement of clues, the careful development of characters, and the perfectly timed revelations and subversions. Yet her writing never feels formulaic or dated. There's a warmth and a humanity to her work that transcends time, which is why so many of her stories are still being dramatized today all over the world to great success and acclaim. Agatha wasn't just the best at what she did, she understood why it worked. Throughout her career, she articulated her thinking on storytelling in interviews, letters, and manuscripts. Learning from Agatha feels like getting advice from that brilliant friend who's somehow always 10 steps ahead of everyone else. Insightful, intelligent, and always practical. Whether you're an aspiring author, a devoted fan, or simply captivated by the art of crime and detective storytelling, in this course you'll find everything you need to create unforgettable and remarkable stories of your own. I absolutely see how there's a market for a course like this. Every time I've read a Christie novel or watched a film based on one, I am blown away by how all of the moving parts come together in the end in a way I can never predict. Plus, she was sensitive to the complexities and the ambiguities of human good versus evil in a way that was, in my opinion, totally ahead of her time. For example, the ending to A Murder on the Orient Express just floored me with its sensibilities. Christie was undeniably a genius in her genre, so I have no doubt that both modern mystery writers and casual fans of her work want to know how she did it. Now, regarding the technical aspects of this Maestro course, it is 2.5 hours long, comprised of 11 lessons, and comes with a 100-page workbook that includes 12 exercises and 46 activities. To purchase the single Christie course, you'll have to hand over 79 British pounds or $89 US. Or if you opt for a year-long membership that gives you access to every course, it is £120 or dollars. We're going to come back to the money of it all in a little bit. The first thing you see on this Maestro page, aside from the specter of a long-dead writer staring into your soul, is a short description that includes this. Made possible today by Agatha's family, an expert team of academics and cutting-edge audio and visual specialists, as if she were teaching you herself. Just under that is a little tag reading Audio and Visual AI Enhancements. So my initial impression was that this whole thing we're seeing is AI generated, and I'm relieved to report that that is not the case. I clicked on the "What does this mean?" link, and it brought me to a 10-minute video going behind the scenes and showing exactly how this course was made. I'm only able to play a few short clips, but I'll have this page linked in the description below, and I would encourage you to check it out, watch the video, and hear from the creators yourself. I'm mostly going to summarize because even though all of this qualifies as fair use, I don't have BBC lawsuit money, so I'm just going to play it safe. In short, BBC Maestro collaborated with Agatha Christie Limited, who's been managing the literary and media rights to her work since 1955. Important to note that the company is managed by Christie's great-grandson, James Pritchard, who is featured in this clip I'll show here.
One of the provisos of this project was that at every single stage, the family would see and have sign-off on what we do.
From the start, we had three guiding principles for this project. First and foremost, and non-negotiable, the basis for the words had to be Agatha Christie's own writing. Secondly, the look and sound of Agatha Christie had to be authentic. And finally, the course had to be valuable for aspiring writers.
So let's go over the few requirements that Pritchard lays out. Requirement 1, Christie in her own words. Excellent choice. No problems there, no comment. Love it, moving right along. Requirement number 3, useful for aspiring writers. I sure hope it would be, for $80. Requirement 2, the look and sound of Christie being authentic is where things get sticky. As mentioned, the figure you see on the screen is not entirely AI. As it turns out, BBC hired an actress by the name of Vivian Keane and then manipulated her face and voice to better resemble Christie. This means they also hired a whole costume department, hair and makeup team, and set design team in addition to the AI specialists. With this in mind, now looking at a still frame, you can tell where the AI begins and ends. Just under her chin and around her hairline, particularly at the temples, is a bit fuzzy. And then what you see of her neck and hands, as well as all the faceless shots of Christie walking around the set, belong to the actress. Regardless of how I feel about any of this, I can't deny that the quality of the AI face is remarkable. In my previous video on AI, I lamented the lack of transparency from AI companies about what exactly they're using to train their machines. So let me just say I do very much appreciate BBC's transparency about what exactly went into this venture, and they do seem to be being honest about what is AI and what is not. I think bringing viewers behind the scenes was 100% the right move, and it helps establish at least a little bit of trust. For that reason, I feel slightly more inclined to be nice today. Slightly. However, you have an actress on set in full hair, makeup, and costume whose real face already resembles Christie quite closely to my mind. Why couldn't you just leave it there? Why did you need to add a layer of AI and enter Uncanny Valley territory? Although I didn't plan on doing 2 AI videos back to back, I'm almost kind of glad it worked out this way because this situation opens up an entirely different can of unethical worms from the M- situation of last time. To my knowledge, the AI used here relied only on photos and videos of Christie to generate her persona. So in this particular case, I'm less concerned about the work of real artists and writers being stolen. The big ethical dilemma here is consent, specifically Agatha Christie's. She is deceased. Not only is she literally unable to consent to having her likeness used in this way 50 years after her death, but she died in 76 at the age of 85. Despite being brilliant, she would not be able to understand this technology. She would have no frame of reference for what any of this is. Artificial intelligence is the stuff of science fiction to her. Which brings us to the people whose job it is to keep Christie's legacy alive, her family. As mentioned, her family, specifically her great-grandson through Agatha Christie Limited, signed off on this project. Let me put it this way. I do believe her estate considered this project carefully. I do believe their hearts were in the right place and that there was no ill intent. But I still think the decision to complete this project in this way was misguided. I believe they made the wrong choice. This is a predicament that has plagued the literary world forever regarding how we handle an author's legacy after their passing and to what extent we should consider their wishes. Franz Kafka is probably the most famous example of this. He instructed his friend Max Brod to destroy all his unfinished work upon his death, including The Trial and The Castle. Brod did not do that, which is why we have those novels at all today. Just last month, in fact, there was a bit of controversy around Joan Didion and the publication of a recently discovered journal of hers called or published as Notes to John, which was deeply personal and written during a time of crisis. She did not expressly forbid publishing this journal, but it doesn't seem she ever intended to do so, nor did she anticipate that anyone would want to.
Forgot to mention here that Didion was known to disapprove of literary executors who published a writer's work after their deaths. So that's not a great look for the publishers. Let it be known that if anyone tries to publish the diary I wrote while I was in therapy, I will haunt you.
The Agatha Christie situation, in my opinion, blows both of those out of the water. This isn't just potentially going against her wishes. This is an attempt to resurrect her. And BBC and her estate are saying as much, which we'll look at more closely in just a second. This is being marketed as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to learn from Christie herself. No, it's not. That ship sailed in 1976. You know what this reminds me of? The spiritualism movement of the late 19th century, thereabouts, when people were holding seances in their parlor with a spiritual medium, and the medium was just like projecting images into the air onto the wall or something, and everyone around the parlor table is like, it's a ghost. This isn't merely a matter of the technology itself being problematic, but it's a blurring of the boundaries between life and death in a way that simply working with an actress would not be. I'm diverging from my bullet points for just a moment because a thought occurred to me, and I hope this is coherent because it's a very difficult issue to articulate clearly.
So I did have a little spiel here that was semi-coherent, but I've since come up with a better way to articulate my point. Anyway, when a person passes, the laws of nature state that we can no longer see their face or hear their voice. That is the tragedy of loss, right? So when we see such an incredibly lifelike rendering of someone who's been dead for 50 years, I think it activates a sort of primordial horror in most people because we know we're not supposed to be seeing this and hearing this. It's unnatural. Whereas with an actor's portrayal of a deceased person, no matter how talented this actor is or how good the costume is, ultimately it's still obviously pretend, even though an audience will suspend their disbelief for the duration of the film or show. For example, one of my favorite films is The Hours, featuring Nicole Kidman as Virginia Woolf. And although her performance is brilliant, she won an Oscar for it, at the end of the day, this is still very clearly Nicole Kidman wearing a fake nose. Actually, come to think of it, the best example in this case is the episode of Doctor Who featuring an actress playing Agatha Christie. And to my knowledge, no one was freaked out by this. Now, to be abundantly clear, an acted portrayal of a real person, living or dead, can absolutely be unethical for a whole host of reasons, consent being one of them. But generally speaking, these portrayals never cross that boundary from mere portrayal to playing God.
Anyway, most people, regardless of their religious or spiritual beliefs, are going to be uncomfortable with all of that and are going to find this disturbing. Also, isn't this a Black Mirror episode? Yeah, the one where the woman like loses her boyfriend and then gets like an AI robot of him and it's really sad and it's not I've ranted for long enough. Let's look at what some other people are saying. An interesting article from Mashable by Timothy Beckworth called BBC and Agatha Christie estate respond to deepfake controversy. Whether the course qualifies as a deepfake depends on how you define deepfake. A 2024 article from BBC Newsround defines deepfakes as videos, pictures, or audio clips made with artificial intelligence to look real. They can be used for fun or even for scientific research, but sometimes they're used to impersonate people like politicians or world leaders in order to deliberately mislead people. Certainly, the BBC knew this project would be controversial, and both Pritchard and BBC Maestro reject the use of the term deepfake in this context. In a statement provided to Mashable, Pritchard said, "What we have created is a course that distills my great-grandmother's ingenious craft into an easy-to-follow and accessible course. This isn't a fake. The words are Christie's own, carefully sourced by researchers. As a family, we approach the project with the utmost care and respect, with the overarching goal of honoring my great-grandmother and to share her immense talent and process with the world. First of all, if this isn't a deepfake, what do you think it is? It is, by definition, a deepfake. To be entirely honest, this comment strikes me as willful ignorance because no one is accusing the writing or the content of being fake. It is Agatha Christie's AI-generated likeness that is the deepfake. It is true that BBC clearly labeled the AI content, but it's still without the consent of the specific individual being rendered. And I imagine one could make the argument that this is deliberately misleading because Christie herself is not teaching this course. Not to mention, Christie's immense talent is already shared with the world in her books. Let's not act like this course was the only way to get her work out there when she has sold more novels than any person in the history of the world. Ever. Here's an article in The Telegraph by Ruth Dudley Edwards, who is herself a crime writer, called AI Agatha Christie is a Crime Against Fiction. Great headline, by the way. Yes, James Pritchard has insisted that all writing advice given in 11 videos by his great-grandmother's recreated voice and face be drawn wholly from her own words. But after a lifetime of reading crime novels and more than 4 decades writing them, I think the whole idea of a disembodied voice mouthing the words selected by a team of academics is a horrid and dangerous way to go. This is an interesting perspective because while I appreciate that BBC used Christie's own words to create the content in this course, Edwards has a point that there's still an element of curation and puppetry that would not be present if, say, a professor or a creative writing instructor put together a course and then presented it in a more standard format. You know what I think would have been a cute way to do this? A cartoon made by real human animators. You could still teach Christie's process to the masses directly from her, but lean into the fact that she is no longer here in a fun and tongue-in-cheek kind of a way. Like, don't even pretend that there's any authenticity in the visuals. That said, I do think Edwards is correct that whether through animation, acting, or AI, there is no way to avoid an uncomfortable quality of putting words in Christie's mouth, even if they are her own words. Anything is better than AI Resurrection, but no matter what, you still have a team of people selecting what they want her to say. Finally, the New York Times has just published a piece about this yesterday from the time that I'm filming, and this might be the closest I've ever come to being in the loop about something. Agatha Christie, who died in 1976, Will See You in Class by Amelia Nierenberg. We are not trying to pretend in any way that this is Agatha somehow brought to life, Michael Levine, the chief executive of BBC Maestro, said in a phone interview. This is just a representation of Agatha to teach her own craft. Yes, you are, though. Obviously, we know you did not reanimate Christie's corpse, but this course is being marketed as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to learn from her. The course description, front and center on Maestro's website, reads, "You can learn directly from the most successful novelist of all time." In fact, in this very quote, you say, Christie is teaching her own craft. No, she's not. She's not here. These statements are mutually exclusive. You cannot have it both ways. It's abundantly clear to me that both BBC and Agatha Christie Limited know this is controversial, know people don't approve, and are trying to hedge their bets. Moving on. The fact that the family approved of this, for Carissa Veliz, a professor of philosophy and the Institute for Ethics in AI at Oxford University, is still extremely problematic. Even if the author's family consented, Christie has not and cannot agree to the course. That is complex with any sort of historical reenactment or animation, but Dr. Veliz noted that writers spend hours finding the right word or the right rhythm. Agatha Christie never said those words. Dr. Veliz said in a phone interview, she's not sitting there, and therefore, yes, it is a deep fake. Agreed. And that echoes what Edward said just a moment ago, that the ethics of any representation or reenactment are never exactly clear-cut. The article then quotes Felix Simon, an AI researcher at Oxford. There's also very little risk of this harming, posthumously, her dignity or her reputation, he argued. I think that makes these cases so complicated because you can't apply a hard and fast rule for every single one of them and say, this is generally good or generally bad. I agree with that as well, particularly the first half, in that I doubt anyone is going to look down on Christie herself for this project. I doubt it's going to damage her legacy or her reputation as the world's best-selling novelist. If anything, it will harm the BBC's reputation and the reputation of her family and her estate. And as much as I want to declare this course generally bad, I will concede that it is not so simple. Some good things did happen here, or at least had the potential to happen. The very concept of a course on Agatha Christie's writing process, great. It is good that they hired an actor and a full creative team. They did use Agatha Christie's own words. They were transparent about their process. Again, was there ill intent? No, I don't think so. And for that reason, I'm actually more disappointed than I am mad. The article ends with this quote. Either way, the creators think Christie, a brave and creative adventurer, would have liked it. Can we definitively know that this is something she would be approving of? Said Mr. Levine. We hope, but we don't definitively know, because she's not here. Right. Exactly. You're so close to getting it. We are dealing with a technology that is the closest thing to necromancy that humans have ever experienced. Maybe I just have more respect for the departed than the average person, but the very fact that we don't definitively know because she's not here, to me it means we shouldn't even try. How would you feel if you knew for a fact what Christie's wishes were, or anyone's wishes, and went against them anyway? That should be your guide. I, for one, would feel disgusted with myself. That said, it's hard to have a moral compass when money is involved. When I ask myself why BBC and Agatha Christie Limited would choose the AI resurrection path, the answer is money. Money and attention. As far as BBC Maestro goes, Agatha Christie is easily the most world-renowned and legendary instructor that they have with the most commercial appeal. Admittedly, I'm not super familiar with most of the British creatives featured, but Christie has had an extra century to gain recognition. It's no surprise that Maestro would want an author of that profile on their roster. That would be like Masterclass making a course with Hemingway. Don't. As for Christie's estate, I understand wanting her work and her process to reach a modern audience. But it's not lost on me that a controversial, attention-grabbing BBC course is the most potentially lucrative way to do it. There's a book I'm aware of, but haven't yet read, called The Virginia Woolf Writing Workshop, and the premise is exactly the same. The author wonders, what would a creative writing course taught by Virginia Woolf look like? Just like the Christie course, the book draws from Woolf's diaries, letters, essays, and notes, and is in her own words. You could have done that. You could have written the Agatha Christie Writers Workshop. But you can't sell a book for $80, and it probably wouldn't have earned a page in the New York Times. Plus, the course almost certainly wouldn't have gotten the attention that it has without the AI additions. And I am aware that I'm adding to that. Of course, people are going to talk about something this sensational. And maybe, just maybe, they'll be curious enough to buy it. Had BBC simply stuck with an unaltered actor, I would have seen this chorus and thought, oh, that's cute, and moved right along and we wouldn't be here. Like most things these days, this is a case of two things can be true at once. The creators clearly care very much about this project, and I believe that they believe Christie would approve. But BBC made an assumption about Christie for Christie, and it's an assumption influenced by potential profit. I've spent several weeks now thinking about AI and chatting about it with a few people in my comments, in my emails, and also offline. We can all agree that this is unprecedented, world-changing technology. And as much as I, as something of a Luddite, would love for it to simply go away, that's unlikely. Ultimately, truly, I just hope that we as a society can learn to harness the best potential benefits of AI without jeopardizing the livelihoods of writers, artists, and creatives in general, without prompting the decline of literacy and critical thinking skills, and without crossing moral and ethical boundaries. I want AI to wash my dishes, which I have to do after this when I would really rather enjoy the first sunny day my state has had in a week and a half. I want AI to file my taxes and find a cure for cancer and solve world hunger, not resurrect my grandma. Agatha Christie was indeed a writer who was very aware of her commercial appeal, and maybe it is true that she would approve of this course and this use of her likeness. We're never going to know. But I have to wonder where we draw the line, though the line should have been drawn already, but here we are. I mentioned Ernest Hemingway and Virginia Woolf a moment ago, both of whom were writers who tragically ended their own lives. And the idea that some education subscription service and AI specialists might try to bring them back in order to sell a course is so profoundly upsetting and disturbing and offensive that it genuinely flips my stomach to even consider. I want to believe that cases like those would obviously be off limits, but I just don't trust the AI industry to have the compassion and the morality not to go that far. As always, I can't make decisions for you, nor do I want to. And if you want to buy this Maestro course, you are free to do so. However, I can't close this video without stressing that the best way to learn to write is to read. If you're an aspiring mystery or crime writer who is a fan of Agatha Christie, the best thing you can do is study her novels front to back and upside down. There's nothing this course can teach you about Christie's process that isn't already present in her work, and that goes for all of the greats. Go directly to the source, which this course is not despite its marketing, and you will be a better writer for it. Oh, well, that is everything I have for you today. This ended up being longer than I thought it would be. There will not be a third AI video next time. I need to think about anything else. This is genuinely affecting my mood. Final housekeeping note before I leave you. Thank you so very much for 10,000 subscribers. That is so far beyond what I thought was possible for this channel when I started it about a year and a half ago. Every moment you spent here, all of your support, truly means the world to me. Not a single like, comment, or subscription goes unappreciated. I have a lot planned for the channel as well as for Thought Couture as a community, and I'm very excited to share it with you in the coming weeks and months. Anyway, thank you so very much for watching. I'm Jo, this is Thought Couture, which I probably should have said in the beginning, but whoops. If you enjoyed this video, or if you simply never want to see the AI-generated likeness of a long-dead writer again, do consider giving it a little bit of a like, which really helps the channel. And for more literary commentary and creative writing content, do consider hitting that subscribe button. If you haven't yet had enough internet for the day, then you might enjoy watching my previous video on AI and the M- controversy, or something entirely unrelated. Thank you again for spending your time with me here today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.